Hello everybody, this is my third video on the Marilyn Manson allegations, and if you want to trace back some of the stuff that I'm talking about in terms of some of the evidence I'll be touting, then you should check out these sites here. Because these are the people who have been finding this stuff and collecting this stuff. And you may say, well, there aren't any mainstream media sites on this. Well, yeah, exactly, because the mainstream media is not even raising a question about this. This situation. And it's understandable to a degree, obviously, because, everyone just assumes that with the number of allegations and with Marilyn Manson's image being what it is, that he must be guilty. But I hope that I laid out for you in my last two videos, and if you haven't seen them, please go look at them, because that's where I lay out a lot of my main argument about this. And I will say that I have become progressively more convinced of Marilyn Manson's innocence as the weeks have gone by. If you go back and look at my first video, you can see that I was really basically kind of 50-50 on it, and what I was arguing was, hey, let's not rush to judgment, let's not cancel this person, there is another side of this to consider. And then now, after what's come out this week, Instagram and Twitter, again, because the mainstream media is not covering this, but what has come out is really, I think that it's getting to a point where we, the public, we're really being asked to swallow a lot of ridiculous stuff to believe these accusers, or to believe a lot of them. So what I want to do, I don't want to retread the stuff that I talked about in my last videos. So I want to talk about what's come out since then. And I also want to spend a little time reading a couple of the statements, the Instagram statements from some of the accusers that I didn't have time to get to in the last video. So in my last video, I talked about Evan Rachel Wood and Esme Bianco, and I do have some more to say actually about them. But I want to start off here reading, one of the longest statements that was provided. And remember, these statements, they're all coming out on Instagram. Esme Bianco, she also did a couple of interviews, but these are people's Instagram statements. So they're choosing this venue. All right. So there are a couple of you that made comments about the fact that, I shouldn't be going off of evidence that I find on Instagram. Well, there's some good stuff that people have found and are putting on Instagram, but this is the forum that the accusers are using. So, I think it's fair game. So this is Gabriella. And unfortunately, I do vacillate back and forth between calling her Gabriella and Gabrielle, and that's my mistake. Sorry about that. But I do mean the same person. I just want to read through this and talk about it. She writes, I met Brian Warner, known as Marilyn Manson, backstage in October 2015. I was 22 and he was 46. The first thing that he ever said to me was that he was, quote, going to bite me. Now that's just left there as if it's some really horrible indictment. We don't, again, like I said in another video, they take these snippets of conversation, and people who've known Marilyn Manson are reaching back into their minds to pull out whatever weird, demented snippet of conversation they can. I don't know the context for, quote, going to bite me. I don't know. And that in and of itself, it's made to sound, the innuendo it's made to sound like this really ominous, horrible thing. I mean, his image, as I talked about in my other videos, his image is Marilyn Manson. You could see it like a mile away. And so I do not accept that when he makes this statement, he's going to bite her, that somehow she had no idea that he would be an edgy person or something. I don't buy it. Continuing on. She says, we talked while the opening band played, and after the show, he invited me on his tour bus. He immediately love-bombed me, telling me that he felt like he'd known me for years, and I felt similarly. Now, there's something about the terminology here of love-bombing. I know that's become a fairly common term in psychological discussions, but my point being that when you look at all of these, it's almost like
it's almost like they were written by the same person. It's almost like they all had the same ghostwriter. They used the same like sort of catchy keywords. It's interesting. I noticed some of these the same writing style. It says he immediately love bombed me, telling me that he felt like he'd known me for years, and I felt similarly. He offered me cocaine. He told me to take off all my clothes and take a shower in front of him. He asked for my number as I was getting ready to leave and invited me to his show the following evening. Now, okay, so far, what has she really described? She said that he made this comment. We don't know the context of wanting to bite her. That he, in her opinion, he love bombed her. But he doesn't even say that he loves her here. All she says is that he told her that he told me that he felt like he'd known me for years. That's the extent of his love bombing. I mean, I'm sorry, but if a person can't see through a line like that, you know, a kind of the basic oldest line in the book, then you're just not the sharpest tool in the shed. I don't care. And you're 22. You can't be that dumb. And then it says he offered me cocaine. Well, yes, he loves cocaine. He's written a lot. I'm sorry to yell. Yes, he loves cocaine. He's written songs about it. He's very open about it. It's no surprise to anyone. And by the way, did you take the cocaine? Were you happy to take the cocaine? Was it really some horrible traumatic experience when this rock star offered you some drugs? Come on. And then it says, he told me to take off all my clothes and take a shower in front of him. Now, we have no context for any of this. I mean, okay, they're hooking up. And he says, I'd like to watch you take a shower. It's almost like someone never knew what sex was or sexuality or something, and they're just surprised by all these things that really don't seem to me weird yet. Okay. And then he says, the second time we met, he broke a wine glass in the hotel room and demanded we make a blood pact together. He cut both of our hands with the broken glass. Now, again, that's not what I would do. It's not my idea of something great to do in a relationship. But again, I don't know the context. And I talked about this in my other videos. Marilyn Manson's image is such that he's a walking advertisement for weirdness. And isn't this exactly what you would expect Marilyn Manson to do? Like, you go out on a date with Marilyn Manson and he wants to, or hook up or whatever, and he wants to see you again, he wants to make a blood pact or whatever. To me, this is exactly what I would expect. And you can say, well, she didn't or whatever. Well, you know, she's not, 22 is not that young, and there's like basic intelligence. And if you don't have that basic intelligence, then maybe your problem is not other people. Maybe you need to work on being smarter about the way you conduct yourself, okay? Sorry, I'm not talking to you in the audience. I'm just saying that I'm responding to what Gabriella published here. It's just so infantilized. As I said in my last video, you know, this infantilization of women that modern feminism seems to promote, it's problematic. Yes. Things went from 0 to 100 at full speed. In the beginning stages of our relationship, he worked a kind of magic on me. We would stay up painting each other, taking Polaroids, and talking until the early hours of the morning. I became completely enmeshed in his world. He told me he loved me 2 weeks after we met, and invited me to go on tour with him in Europe. Okay, she says, so she goes on tour with him. She says, I was in art school at the time and had never left the country, but felt it was a rare opportunity. I do not have fond memories of this tour, though, as things had gone downhill quickly. He would tie me up for the first of many times and rape me. I sobbed on the floor in the hotel room, and when I looked at him, he was smiling. He told me he knew that's how I loved him because of my reaction. He took naked photos of me without my permission while I was sleeping and tied up and sent them to his friends. Okay, now, aside from the fact that we don't know without evidence whether this person is even telling the truth, but let's just say that I'm taking at least these words at face value. There's still so much context that's missing. I mean, look at the size of this type. You know, it's an Instagram post that basically does this for a few pages. And so it's not, you know, there's so much that's left out here. This is not like a legal brief. Okay. But, I think that what seems to be coming out with a number of these stories is that Marilyn Manson was involved in one of these, BDSM relationships, was involved in these with some of these different women. And it sounds like it was kinky. But again, we don't know. I just don't know. When she says he would tie me up for the first of many times, I just, again, I don't see in any of these accusations from any of these women except for once from Evan Rachel Wood. I'll talk about that in a second. But 99% of the time, these allegations don't involve the woman saying no. In fact, if you read between the lines on some of them, or if you look, for instance, at Esme Bianco, some of the stuff that she has said, it's actually the opposite, that she was projecting enthusiasm for this in their relationship. She claims that he had given her some injuries or some whip marks or whatever that she finds traumatizing now. I'm talking about Esme. But if you go back, but she also, in an interview, she also admitted that after he had given her these marks, she texted him and said, "Oh, it hurts so good," or "I love it," or whatever. Men are not mind readers, and especially in these situations, I suspect that these women wanted to date this rock star, and they were willing to get into, or to pretend to be into, kinky sex and stuff. And now, for reasons that we'll discuss in a minute, they're rewriting their history. Even Evan Rachel Wood, as I've talked about in my previous videos, she was doing these interviews when she was with Marilyn Manson about how much she loved the dark, kinky aspect, the dangerous aspect of their relationship, as she later mentioned it, or she later talked about it. But Evan Rachel Wood and Marilyn Manson were doing this video where they're like having sex and blood and stuff. I mean, come on. And again, I don't even think that we can trust what these girls are saying, and I'm going to get into that more in a moment. She says, so he would throw objects at me like glass. He would cut me during sex. He called me crazy. He called me autistic. Now, she and Esme talk about, and one of the others, they mentioned this idea that he would cut them during sex. And again, it's always within the context of sex. It's not like, according to their testimony, it's not like, oh, he just suddenly went into a rage one day in the kitchen when I overcooked the eggs, and then he cut me or whatever. And so what I'm trying to say is, I'm not saying that it's okay to do whatever you want to do with somebody during sex, but I'm saying that it sounds like the cutting was an aspect of this kinky BDSM stuff. And while I don't understand it, it's not my cup of tea, right? There are a number of people who are into this. And again, I don't see her saying here, none of these pages, does she say that she said no? And I think it's probably the opposite, and seemed to be enthusiastic. It says, one night in London before he played, he would force me to take drugs with him. And this time it was more than my body could handle. This allegation of being forced to take drugs, what does that mean? Does that mean that he literally was forcing you to take something? Or does that mean that he was like, oh, come on, it'll be fun. I don't know. It could be either one. Okay, getting to the end of it. But she says, I experienced sleep deprivation on multiple occasions. One instance after I agreed to get matching tattoos. Now, the way that some of these women, when they talk about sleep deprivation, first of all, they use that term. And I told you that the vocabulary in these statements sounds really unusually similar. Like if I were a teacher who was trying to catch plagiarism in a class, you get a really good sense for when someone is plagiarizing or when it's in their own voice. And so all of them use this term sleep deprivation. But as I already said, when I was doing the video on Esme and her allegations, she talks about how he sleep deprived her one weekend. And then at the same time, she talks about how they did cocaine the whole weekend. And so, okay, I understand. Are you saying that someone giving you cocaine that you freely, willingly take, okay, that is sleep deprivation? Like, to me, it seems like that's what they're taking these things that are not as serious and or even maybe not a problem, and they're twisting them, and they're, I think, turning them into something that sounds much more problematic or ominous. So she says, one instance after I agreed to get matching tattoos, he was forcing drugs in my mouth while I was laying down in his home getting tattooed. Now, she says he was forcing drugs in her mouth while she was laying down in his home getting tattooed. So, I'm picturing here, I'm picturing, first of all, that she's already admitted that she does a ton of drugs with him. I mean, she said that she had an incident, with the paramedics having to wake her up, and then she still continues to take lots of drugs. I guess it's all Manson's fault. And so we know that she takes drugs, and she's laying down. She's getting a tattoo. A tattoo can take a while. I don't know again what the situation was. Where it was Manson taking drugs and he was like, here, you want this? And she can't move, so he helps put it in her mouth. I mean, I understand that that's not what she's alleging here, but I'm saying that this all sounds very fishy. And I don't find, there's something she's about to say too that I find very incredible. All right, so I'm skipping through a bit here. It's just she tells a story. It's kind of inconsequential about a tattoo incident, and he got upset with her and tried to yell at her anyway. But I want to look at this part. So she writes that he took a photo of her, posted on Instagram, captioned it, etc. And she says, I thought this was his way of making me feel special, but instead it was used to triangulate me with other women. I know this because those women reached out. I don't understand what this means. First of all, I find the wording, I told you earlier that there are some terms that really don't sound like they are in the style of the writer, especially when I look at, other stuff online that I find of theirs. Triangulation, I mean, that's not even a term. I feel like I have a sophisticated vocabulary, but it's not even the way that I would think of to use this term. It doesn't really even make sense. It sounds like she's taking someone is taking some kind of catchphrase and some kind of sophisticated term and trying to insert it where it doesn't belong. Someone explained to me on YouTube, what is she saying? She says that he took a picture of her and put it on Instagram, and he was trying to triangulate her with other women. I know, and so does that mean that? What does that mean? Okay, I'm sorry, it just doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, so this is really where I'm going with this. She writes, on Christmas Day, he canceled plans with me, and I was devastated. I felt betrayed and humiliated because I had sacrificed so many parts of myself to please him. The jarring reality had finally consumed me, and I tried to kill myself. I was 51-50'd, and that's basically, as I understand it, it's basically like you're committed to a psychiatric unit. So it's serious. It's not like, oh, I just dropped in for some counseling or something. Like there's a whole process, and you have to strip down everything and put on different clothes, and they have to search you, and there are all of these restrictions and stuff. I spent Christmas in the hospital. She says this. I was 51-50'd and spent Christmas in the hospital. All right. Now, here's the thing. I have a source who is someone that, and I want to protect this person's anonymity because they've asked that, but this is someone who was around Marilyn Manson daily years ago during the time of a number of these allegations, and knew him pretty well, and knows enough to say they believe these allegations are bullshit, and that a number of the accusers in this person's experience, a couple especially, were very, very non-credible. Now, you don't have to take my word for it, right? And I realize that I'm telling you secondhand information. But I want you to know that this person has given me some text, and I'm going to show you these texts, and I want you to know that I have investigated and to the best of my knowledge, and I feel comfortable saying that this source is correct, and the source is accurate and truthful and legit. All right? Take that for what it's worth. Maybe it's worth nothing. But so anyway, these are texts from Gabrielle to my source, and because my source believes that Marilyn Manson is innocent, this person has been trying to gather some of their records, and they came across this. So you can see here that the date is 12/26/2015, and we're looking at the day after Christmas, okay? And understand, remember that Gabrielle's testimony is that on Christmas Day she tried to kill herself, was 5150, and then spent time in the hospital. They would not have, with a suicide attempt being 5150, they would not have allowed her out the next day. And I really don't believe that they're allowed to, my experience, and I've had some experience with this through a relative who had to go to the psychiatric hospital and spend some time. The cell phone use that's not something that you can do. And certainly not right after you try to kill yourself would you be able to have access to this. So let's read. So already, this really kind of blows Gabrielle's story, wide open. Because it tells us that she's not, it's the day after Christmas when she claimed she was sectioned and she in the hospital, and 8:16 p.m. and here she is, apparently free to use the phone. She says, "Hey, is M okay? I texted him a bit back and forth, but haven't heard much, and I don't want to bug him because I know holidays are hard, but wasn't sure how he was doing." And then my source writes, "Sorry, all my contacts on my phone got erased. Who is this?" And then she writes, "It's okay, Gabriella." And then my source writes, "I'll save your number again. I haven't seen him in a while. He texted me on Christmas, but nothing else since. So I really don't know." Okay, and then look at the next text. Gabriella writes, "Oh, okay. Don't mean to bug you. Just worried. Wanted to make sure he was okay, and he's always in good hands with you, so didn't know if that was the case. Anyways, hope you had a nice holiday, and talk later. Kisses and hugs." And then my source writes back, "Well, I have to drop off some things at his place, so I'll reach out to him. If I hear back, I'll let you know. Happy holidays to you too."
And look, it's important to note that when someone is committed or is taken into custody at a psychiatric unit for a Section 5150, they are held for 72 hours, and they are not even allowed to have their shoelaces, much less a cell phone. And so the idea that Gabrielle would be messaging my source from a psychiatric hold that she had just been placed into on a Section 5150 for a suicide attempt, it's just flat out preposterous. And so this is a huge hit to her credibility, and I can't take anything that she says seriously.
I hope you can see from these texts that what is going on here is that she, basically what happened is that she was in this relationship with Marilyn Manson for some time, and then as relationships do, especially when it's these kinds of, rock star fan relationships, or groupie, or whatever term you want to use, and I'm sorry, no offense to anybody there, I'm just saying, and so they fizzle, right? It fizzled out. And here she is, trying to get in touch with him and basically maybe being ghosted or maybe not. I don't know what was going on. But it seems to me that it's not what Gabriella would have us believe. All right. And, I just want to read from the end of her statement here because, again, it is interesting to me how many of these statements share the same, it's like the same almost ghostwriter in that they seem to all follow, not all, I guess, but I mean, basically, they seem to follow this kind of similar arc, this progression. And so then, by the end, there's this statement about what it's done to her, and she uses a number of the same terms, and a number of them sound, again, like these sort of catchy psychological, catchphrases or terminology. And so she says, "As after I ended things, I was in a state of shock. He studied and mirrored me. He learned my traumas, hopes, fears, and dreams." It's almost like I'm reading a novel or something too. It's very strange. "He had acquired all this information, and it felt like he was using it to build my trust and then slowly tear me down. I didn't sleep. I lost a significant amount of weight. I felt the days begin to blur, and I couldn't recognize myself. I had suicidal ideation and was completely dissociated. Esme used the term dissociated as well. I feel like I'm pretty knowledgeable about psychology, and yes, I know what the clinical term dissociation means. Uh, the way that they use it, I don't know. I felt this wound began to permeate through my soul. She writes, I felt this wound began to permeate through my soul. Look, and let me say, I know that there are some people who have a problem with the fact that I make jokes and that I make fun of this stuff, and I understand where you're coming from. But the thing is that I'm doing so because I really very much believe that these accusers are full of shit. And I'm not saying Marilyn Manson is perfect or Marilyn Manson hasn't done some fucked up stuff or whatever. But I think that all of this is a Me Too hit job, and so that is my attitude. And so when I make jokes, it's really, partly I'm trying to entertain myself and my audience, but partly it's because I think it is worthy of ridicule. And ridicule actually can be a tactic, a rhetorical tactic, and it's been used well for thousands of years. But anyway, now this is the part where I'm just like, oh my God. She writes, I had fallen deeply for an illusion of safety and love. I'm sorry, the fuck you say? You had fallen for an illusion of safety and with Marilyn Manson? Or frankly, dating any rock star. If you look through the history of the great rock stars and pop stars and all of the great artists and all of them, you will find things that are very reprehensible in terms of treating them people selfishly and narcissistically and whatever. I'm not saying all of them, but a number of them. All right, now I wanted to look at the statement of Ashley Walters because she is another accuser who has gotten a lot of attention. She is the main one who is backing up Esme's account of things, and to some degree saying that she had witnessed some things and seen bruises. And then also, talking about her experience with Manson. And so I want to look at what she said, and then I want to talk about issues with her that I have. So she writes this is her Instagram post as well. She writes, Brian Warner, aka Marilyn Manson, reached out to me on social media in 2010, asking if we could collaborate on a photo shoot together. As a photographer and an admirer of his work, I was excited for the opportunity. We quickly became friends, and after about 6 months, he asked me to come work for him full-time as his personal assistant. In the beginning, he'd put me on a pedestal and would tell me I was saving his life. He'd frequently say things like, "It's us against the world." We became extremely close, like family. We even got matching tattoos. He presented his house as a safe space where you could express yourself freely and without judgment. I didn't realize he was gathering information that he'd later use against me. I soon became a victim of his psychological abuse. He was very skilled at gaslighting his inner circle. Now, first of all, so far we have not gotten really any specific allegations. It's a lot of, like I said in the last one, it's a lot of kind of general phrases and adjectives and so forth. And that doesn't necessarily make it wrong, but again, we're getting a disgruntled employee's impressions of things here. And typically an employer-employee relationship, it will start off often in a positive way, right? But then things go sour. And Gabriella said that Manson was going through a lot of different personal assistants. I don't know if that's true or not, but that it's not a crazy abnormal thing for people, especially high-powered, stars and stuff, to go through a number of assistants. And I don't doubt that Manson is probably not the easiest person necessarily to work for, but at the same time, I'm sure he's really interesting in a lot of ways too, and she doesn't even deny that here. Now, she uses this term safe space. She says Manson had initially presented his home as a safe space. And I noticed that Gabriella, in her Instagram post that we just read, she talked about how her initial dreams, what did she say? It was such a ridiculous thing to say. She said, I'd fallen deeply for an illusion of safety and love. What is up with this safety thing? I think that whoever is helping them to write these, because I do believe, and I'll talk about this in a moment, but I do believe it's a coordinated, in general, it's a coordinated rollout. Maybe not every single person. I think there's also a bandwagon effect that's going on. But my point being, though, I see this in a number of the statements, the accuser statements, this idea that they'd fallen for this illusion of safety, safety. That word keeps coming up, and again, there are just certain things that maybe it's coincidental, but it certainly does sound like everybody has run this through the same person, or the same person has even helped to write it. It says, "I'd witnessed him inflict this cycle." Okay, sorry. So she says, he was very skilled at gaslighting. They like to use that term a lot. "I'd witnessed him inflict this psychological circle. I'd witnessed him inflict this psychological abuse, on everyone he employed, everyone he dated. He would dictate the perimeters of our reality. Horrifying, deranged behavior and insane scenarios became normalized." Now, again, these are all general terms, okay? So horrifying, deranged behavior, insane scenarios. Well, he is Marilyn Manson. I'm sure he does live his life in a different way. I mean, I don't know. If you look at Esme's testimony, or her interview, one of the things that gets pointed out in the interview is that Manson stays up really late, and that he had really dark furniture and black carpet and black walls and heavy drapes, so that it was basically like a kind of a black hole inside his house, which I think sounds actually really cool. But sometimes they would have to use like cave lamps or whatever you call those things, right, to get around, headlamps. And so, they were portraying that in that article. Esme and the writer were portraying that behavior as deranged, basically. And so I don't know. Someone gives me all these adjectives piled up here, and I'm not really in much in the way of specifics. I become very suspicious. She says he was extremely interested in mind control, torture tactics, i.e. different sound frequencies that would shift your mood or make you nauseous. Okay, wait a minute. So she's talking about torture, but then she says he would mess with sound frequencies. So is that what she's saying is torture? Because she puts it right there. Look, she says he was extremely interested in mind control. Don't even really know what that means, but mind control, torture tactics, i.e. different sound frequencies that would shift your mood or make you nauseous. I mean, come on. This could even be something like they're sitting around killing time or something, and he's like, "Oh, look, this is cool. I read that if you do this, then it could make someone feel this way or whatever." I mean, come on. That's the problem, though, with these statements, is that most people, understandably, and the media too, are not going to take the time to really break it down and ask some questions. Okay, and I'm not saying I know what's false and what's not here. I'm just telling you how I read it. All right, she says, "It felt like I was his property because he would offer me up for sexual encounters to please potential collaborators or friends, and bragged that he could do so." Again, when she says, I know it sounds bad, but then she says, "would offer me up for sexual encounters to please potential collaborators or friends." Now, do you understand what she's saying here? Because if it passes by you fast, then you're going to miss it. She's saying that he would try to basically help her or encourage her to, or whatever, to, that he would encourage her to hook up with his friends and collaborators. In other words, like other rock stars and like big important people. If they're Marilyn Manson's friends, or collaborators, like they're going to be really well connected because he was at the top, right? I hope he still is. I said past tense, but I hope he still is. But so it's not like she makes it sound like he's pimping her out, but that's not. It's not how you have to interpret it necessarily. She says, "I'd be threatened if he wasn't happy with me or made to do impossible tasks so he could continue to berate me." Now, this is really tricky what this writer just did in this statement. They're pulling some writing tricks here, because if you look at this statement, it says that he was offering, she says, he was offering me up for sexual encounters with collaborators and friends. And then the next sentence says, I'd be threatened if he wasn't happy with me or be made to do impossible tasks. Okay, so she's not talking, the second sentence about threatening her, she's actually not talking about the sex stuff. She's moved on now to other things, and I think she's referring to now is like personal assistant stuff. So this is very sneaky. It's very sneaky writing strategies here. She doesn't want to come out, or whoever's writing this doesn't want to come out and say that Marilyn Manson was literally threatening her into having sex with his friends and collaborators. They don't want to say that for whatever reason, maybe legal or otherwise. And so instead, what they do is they have this one sentence where it talks about how she was basically like encouraged, or however she wants to put it, offered up for sexual encounters with other rock stars and friends. And then in the next sentence, it goes on to talk about something else, but it makes it sound like by proximity of the two sentences that Marilyn Manson was threatening her into having sex with his friends and stuff. So the reason why I'm pointing this out to you is because, there's this idea, and I can't remember the term, but there's this idea in the history of like the legal system and criminal justice and stuff. There's this idea that if you can't trust part of a text, or you cannot trust a source in one thing, if you know a source to be inaccurate in one thing, then therefore it's much harder to trust that source in other ways. And so what I'm trying to do is go through these women's testimony, like I did with Evan Rachel Wood's and Esme Bianca's in my last video. And I looked at excerpts from their testimony, so go check it out. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to show you that you're being fed a particular perspective with an agenda, and that everything is not necessarily as it seems. There are big credibility problems here. And as I talked about in my earlier videos, there are great incentives, whether career-wise or in terms of media attention for these women, or maybe in terms of just being pissed off at Marilyn Manson. So let's go back to Ashley, the former assistant's testimony or post on Instagram. So she says that he would berate her if he tried to make her do impossible tasks, and then he would berate her. She says, he isolated me from my friends and family, which is something that a number of them use that similar terminology for. And it says, he isolated me from my friends and family. Sometimes I wouldn't be allowed to leave for days. Sometimes I wouldn't be allowed to sleep. Now, understand, what is she saying here? She's his personal assistant, and I'm sure that personal assistants get run ragged in Hollywood. She would not be the first to attest to that. And she talks about how, she didn't get a lot of sleep. Well, I know, because he was staying up, late nights. He likes late nights, and she's hanging out with him and stuff. It doesn't have to be something like really nefarious and horrible going on. It's just could be, what it sounds like to me, is an assistant who's being worked really hard. Maybe not unusually hard, but it has a lot of work to do, and it's stressful. And also the boss has kind of, Marilyn Manson does have this sort of unconventional or even perhaps erratic personality. I don't know. It's difficult to keep up with. So, keep going. She says he'd frequently become violent, throwing items, including glass plates and heavy objects. Now, she does not say the context for this, or she never says that he throws them at her either. I don't have a problem believing that Marilyn Manson gets angry and throws objects, and I'm not saying that is healthy behavior. Again, that's not behavior that I would want in a boyfriend or a husband, and I would call that, if it is done more than occasionally, I would call that abusive behavior, emotionally abusive. But I do not call that cancelable behavior. And again, if we're going to look into the biographies of everybody in Hollywood and everybody in the music industry and everybody in the art world and everybody in the literature world, and we are going to eliminate everyone who throws objects at other objects in anger, we're going to have basically almost no one left, okay? And so again, I have not seen testimony yet from anyone that Marilyn Manson was throwing objects at them. I've not seen testimony that Marilyn Manson was hitting them. Somebody correct me in the comments if I'm just blanking out, but I've not, all of these things that are classic abuse, I don't see these. I don't see a number of these acts in the testimony about Marilyn Manson. The accusations that women make are that he is can be difficult to be around. He has mood swings. He throws objects. He can throw objects at other objects. He says things that are rude or hurtful. And then the rest of it takes place within, or arguably within, a sexual context of this BDSM stuff. And I know that Evan Rachel Wood claims that they didn't have a BDSM relationship, but man, her interviews around that time and afterward, really until just a few years ago, they sure indicate something, I think, different. And I go over that in the other videos, my other videos, so take a look at that. All right, so Ashley says, many nights I feared for my safety or the safety of others. I'd let management know when I was having an exceptionally bad experience with him, but they say things like, it is what it is, or he's done worse, and send me back in. Sometimes I was too scared to tell management everything. Sometimes I was told it was my fault because I wasn't setting enough boundaries. Well, she probably wasn't setting enough boundaries, because the thing, that we're not supposed to be reading into these statements is how much Marilyn Manson was surrounded by a number of hangers-on and for lack of a better term, groupies. I'm not trying to insult anybody, right? I'm just saying, all of these people, can you just put yourself in the position of a movie star or a rock star for a minute, and you would just be astounded. Michael Jackson's attorney, one of the points that he made when he was defending Michael Jackson, who, by the way, was acquitted by a jury and was investigated by the FBI and it was found he did nothing wrong. But one of the points that Michael Jackson's attorney made was that people would be shocked at how many lawsuits and how much frivolous bullshit and all kinds of crazy things a huge star like Michael Jackson attracts. I mean, he had women suing him for paternity and all these people that he'd never met suing him. Like, he was just constantly sued for all kinds of stuff. And so what I'm trying to say to you is, this Manson situation is not a normal person. This is someone who was attracting at times a lot of, probably not all or anything, but a number of, to use that term again, problematic individuals. And I'm sure, and he was contributing to it in his own ways too. But this is just this is just a mess. And these accusers, there are problems with their statements and with their stories, and it doesn't sit right with me. And you can say, well, that's you and you're wrong. But over the course of researching these videos that I've done, I just keep seeing all of these reasons stacking up to disbelieve the accusers and to believe Manson. She says, so Ashley writes, a year or so later, our professional relationship ended. Now, what does that mean? A year or so later, our professional relationship ended. That's an interesting way of putting it. It's almost like someone is trying to avoid saying that they were fired. Because if she left, why doesn't she say that? Okay? Esme claimed that she left Manson. I'm not sure that I believe that, but she claimed that. But no, she gives us this very sort of overworked, over-edited, kind of very slick PR statement about how our professional relationship ended. It was very amicable. We remain friends to this day. No, she didn't say that, but that's the kind of bullshit statements people put out in Hollywood, right? So she says, a year or so later, our professional relationship ended. I got fired, basically. He continued to harass me and smear my reputation for months. Smear my reputation. Now, again, could that possibly mean that she was asking him to be a reference since he had just fired her and she needed to get a job? And I'm sure being a personal assistant for movie stars is not, the easiest job to get. And he didn't give her a reference. Maybe he even said something bad about her. I don't know. People are allowed to do that unless it's not true, okay? And so anyway, She says, he threatened my financial security. I don't know what the fuck that means. He threatened my financial security. I mean, this is like, it's like Orwellian 1984, like, doublespeak. You have to, like, sift through this to even begin to know what they're saying. It's terrible writing, even though I think it's ghost written. Okay. So she says, he threatened my financial security. By then, I'd grown close with several of Manson's bandmates, girlfriends, and friends. I witnessed them at their own stage of having their world be controlled by him and his abusive antics. Which, by the way, I have talked, as I said, I've talked to some people behind the scenes who knew Manson for a while and knew some of the accusers and were around him a lot, and they have a very different story. Now, one of the people who knows Manson and also knew and was friends with Evan Rachel Wood for a while, especially during the time in which they were dating, and she's posted pictures, including the notorious Nazi picture with Evan Rachel Wood dressed up as a German soldier with the Hitler mustache added. Anyway, my point is that, you know, Leslie has verified that who she is and that she was friends with both of these at the time. And she came out recently with a statement on Instagram. And she says, Manson is very charismatic. I was lucky enough to spend enough time with him to get to see the inner depths of his personality. He is not a monster, nor a god. He is a man that has created continuous hits for over 25 years. He is complex and forever evolving. There was an extended length of time I enjoyed being in his company during 2007 through 2008. He was never violent or did anything that was non-consensual. I personally saw the tenderness and love he showed his former girlfriend, fiancée. And she's talking there about Evan Rachel Wood, even though I think for legal reasons, because Evan Rachel Wood has threatened to sue some people, has contacted people online. So anyway, but she says, I personally saw the tenderness and love he showed his former girlfriend, fiancée, Evan Rachel Wood. I do not have anything to gain for sharing part of my personal collection of photos from this time frame. I only share them to show that there are two sides to this. We should not be using social media to be judge, jury, and executioner. It is time to cancel culture. And like I said, I've talked to a couple of other people behind the scenes, and one who knew Manson for a number of years and saw him very frequently, and they are of the similar opinion. So, I want to finish up Ashley's statement. She says, whether it be through charm or coercion, it wasn't at all unusual for any of us to get sucked back in. Yeah, I get it. He's charming, he's persuasive, he's a wealthy rock star, so he has a lot of influence. None of these things are reasons to cancel someone, okay? And I understand that she's alleging more. I'm just saying that there so much of this is just, it's just empty sort of bullshit and platitudes. She says, it took me a long time to fully realize and process the trauma I went through and witnessed. You know, these terms, processing, each of these, or many of these accusers, they use that term. There's all, like I said, all of these kind of catchphrases that are popular in psychology right now relating to trauma and abuse and all of that. They're all using the same vocabulary. She says, my very first panic attack occurred while working there. I continue to suffer from PTSD and struggle with depression, which is another thing that a number of the accusers, including Evan Rachel Wood and Esme and others, are claiming that they have complex PTSD. I stayed in touch with quite a few people who went through their own traumas under his control, as we all struggled, as survivors do, to get on with our lives. I'd keep hearing stories disturbingly similar to our own experiences. It became clear the abuse he's caused. He continues to inflict on so many, and I cannot stand by and let this happen to others. Now, it's interesting, and people have pointed this out online, that in the years after her supposed abuse and her harassment by Manson, she continued to post about him enthusiastically on Instagram, continued to go to concerts, Manson concerts, and so on. And yes, it doesn't necessarily mean that she's not telling the truth, but there's just many things here that start to add up and are fishy. And I think one of the main points that I want to make is that I mentioned in my last video that this really had the feel of a coordinated PR rollout. This did not have the feel of something that is organic, that these charges developed organically, like one person comes forward and then another person comes forward and another. I mean, almost all of them popped up on Instagram the same day, or definitely the same week, but mostly like within the same like brief span of time. They pop up on Instagram, and they're written in almost in exactly pretty much exactly the same way, to where to me they sound ghost written, and using all these catchphrases and everything, in psychology and terms from abuse, about abuse and so forth, and there's, they're doing interviews. Some of them though have already pulled what they put on Instagram, like Gabriella, for instance.
I also want to look at the allegations of another woman, Chloe Black. And I'm not going to read through her entire post on Instagram. It's rather lengthy, except to say that it mirrors what some of the others are writing about. And, she talks about. It's interesting how she says in her original post, she says that she has nothing to gain from telling her story. She says, I have nothing to gain from telling my story. In fact, I'm risking a lot by potentially incurring the wrath of his supporters. I risk being labeled as a victim for the rest of my life, etc. There's nothing to be gained. I won't get positive attention or clout, as people say. I won't get money. And so that's what she asserts. But it's interesting that on January 29th, Chloe Black posted on social media that a new music video called Title Track had just been released. So on January 29th, she is promoting her big new release. And then, what do you know? Just basically 3 days later, she is going on Instagram and is posting about the abuse that she endured from Marilyn Manson. And so, okay, so she released, do you get this, what I'm saying here? She releases this new round of music and this big video and everything, posts about it on January 29th, and then the very next week, early next week, she's coming forward in this media blitz with a number of other accusers, and they're all simultaneously dropping these allegations online at the same time. And then apparently she was receiving some pushback about this, and so she posted sometime afterward. She said, last August, I had the incredible honor of shooting the video for Title Track in the woods of Arizona. Originally, video release had been scheduled for the beginning of February. I had no idea that one of the abusers responsible for the experiences that inspired the song and video would be publicly named that week. Now, do you understand? I mean, this is so ridiculous. She's basically telling on herself, and she's doing it in a really stupid way. But she's trying to deny that she was trying to get publicity with this Marilyn Manson stuff, with these allegations, and then she gives herself away. She says that basically it was timed. The release of her video was basically timed so that it would coincide with this, and then she even has the audacity or the stupidity, I'm not sure which, to try to connect this song that she's just released with her Marilyn Manson allegations. And she's claiming that Marilyn Manson was one of the inspirations for this song. So, I mean, this is prepackaged PR bullshit, I think. And that's just my personal opinion. But there is something very fishy about the way all this has been packaged up and released in a PR blitz. And it's the same for Esme Bianco. And if you read the interviews, if you read the New York Magazine interview with her. All that whole interview, they're trying to tie it in with the Game of Thrones stuff. Same thing with the Good Morning America interview. They try to tie it in with her character on Game of Thrones. It's this is all about selling entertainment, and now, unfortunately, it's a kind of our entertainment obsessed media culture has now melded with Me Too and modern feminism to create some Frankenstein's monster, and we're seeing it now, where the entertainment world and these accusations and the Me Too movement are now melding. So we have this kind of pre-packaged Me Too entertainment for our consumption and our our commenting, and for people to capitalize off of it for their careers, for money, for PR, whatever. That's my opinion.
But then you've got people like Esme doing interviews. You have some minor accusers selling their money to the Sun, selling their story to the Sun. So there was one woman who claimed that he forcefully kissed her when she was 15. That is her worst allegation. And he forcefully kissed her when she was 15 and groped some of her teenage friends. I mean, it's these very vague things, and she sells her story to the Sun. That's her big story, and it says that she's talked to the FBI. I mean, in some ways, this is really a tempest in a teapot, and it's almost, if it weren't so tragic for Marilyn Manson, it's almost kind of funny, the idea that all of these institutions now, or like bureaucracies like the FBI are getting involved in this and doing investigations in the LA Sheriff's Office. I mean, I know it's not funny, it's very serious, but I hope that someone is doing some really good investigation into the backgrounds of these women. Now, I want to make a couple of points here. First of all, I want to go back to Esme just a bit, because Esme claimed in her interview with Good Morning America and with the New York Magazine and in her testimony before the Congressional Assembly, she claimed that this behavior by Manson, that she experienced the whippings, the binding, and all of this, that this was something that she didn't expect, that was surprising, was shocking, and so on. But what has come out since then is that Esme actually has a long and extensive history in the BDSM community and as a BDSM performer. And so if you look, I've just got some pictures here that I've gotten from a really wonderful researcher online who's just found a lot of this stuff. But these pictures, I mean, you should see right now, they definitely show that Esme, I don't actually know if you could get much more experienced in BDSM than she is. I mean, the sense that she's doing some of it for a living. So come on, get the fuck out of here with any kind of sob story that includes ideas like, I didn't know it was going to happen, or I didn't expect it, or all of a sudden this happened. And if you go back and look at my last video where I look at her interview and I read her interview and I break both of them down, I think that you'll see what I'm saying. I'm not going to go over it again here, but I just wanted to point out this is a huge inconsistency. And remember, that idea that I mentioned earlier, that if you cannot trust testimony, if you cannot trust someone in one part of their testimony, you find out that part of the testimony is inaccurate, then you cannot trust them. In fact, you should doubt them in the rest of their testimony. Okay? One of my legal people, you can tell me, it's like a Latin phrase, I believe, that I'm trying to express here. I should probably look it up, but I've got too much to do. And Esme was not the only one who was involved, like I said, in some of these edgy BDSM experiences. I mean, here is another one of the accusers, and of Manson's accusers, and you can see here she takes part in extreme BDSM shows where the back is actually punctured and the person is suspended by hooks, and so there's actual like bleeding and pain involved. She's one. There are others. I mean, even Ashley Walters, his former assistant, there are pictures of her that look to me like she was involved in some of this kinky stuff. You can see there she is with Esme. So, and it's not about slut shaming. And someone addressed this online, and I thought they addressed it really well. That's not the question here. And no one is saying that people deserve to be raped or to be abused because they do edgy stuff, or they're an edgy profession, or have an edgy hobby or something. No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying that when someone is gets into those kinds of relationships and interactions, then it can help create situations where lines can be hard to discern and lines can be blurred. And also the fact that these women, a number of these women, did participate in this stuff, and heavily so in some cases, also lends credence to the idea that Marilyn Manson was engaged in a consensual activities with them, or what he believed to be consensual, and that they are now going back and rewriting their history, and they're pretending to be more clueless about all this than they really were, and acting like they were these sort of innocent, naive women, sexually inexperienced, not familiar with the dark side. They thought that this was a safe space, as one of them said. I mean, look at this picture. Is safety the first word that comes to your mind when you see this picture? And so their whole claim that they thought this was a safe place and warm and cozy and whatever, like grandma's house. I don't understand. But no, I know I'm being flippant, but no, come on. Now, I said that this was a coordinated rollout that I believe. What's my reasoning for that? Well, several weeks ago, when these allegations first came out, a woman named Greta, who goes by Greta Aurora on Twitter and YouTube and Instagram, and she makes a number of really cool videos about, not just about this, but about politics and Me Too and women and men and all that. But she had a brief affair with Marilyn Manson when she was very young. Young, I mean, not underage. But when she was younger, and she posted a picture with Marilyn Manson that was taken around that time. And anyway, she says that she had a wonderful time and there was nothing abusive, that he was very kind and respectful and so forth. Anyway, she posted a week ago, or two ago, this email that she had received from a woman named Ilma Gore. And Ilma Gore was sending these emails out to any women who had any kind of romantic or sexual contact with Marilyn Manson, or who might have, basically contacting women and saying, hey, you should contact me. And in the email, basically, if you read it, what's going on is Ilma Gore is trying to recruit women to come out against Marilyn Manson. And she mentions that she's a representative or associated with Evan Rachel Wood. Many people on the internet believe that she is Evan Rachel Wood's girlfriend. I don't have verification of that, although there is an interview online that Evan Rachel Wood did with this woman about a work of art that she painted. And so I don't know, but the point, Evan Rachel Wood has not disclosed who she's dating, has just said that she's with someone who's non-binary. But my point is that this person, this Ilma Gore, who's at least good friends with Evan Rachel Wood, was emailing and trying women who had a history with Marilyn Manson, and was trying to recruit them to join in with this. And this has been something that's been in the works too for a couple of years at least. And it's associated as well with the passage of the Phoenix Act. The Phoenix Act is this piece of legislation that Evan Rachel Wood and Esme Bianco supposedly worked on. And I have a feeling that Ilma Gore was very much involved in it as well. And then there was a state senator, Rubio, who was Susan Rubio, right, who was sponsoring this. My point is that this is all part of a larger thing. This is not an organic process, and it is a coordinated rollout. And you can see it if you look at all of this. And so it makes sense that the Instagram posts come out around the same time, and it makes sense that when Evan Rachel Wood finally names her abuser, that all of the dominoes fall into place with this pretty quickly. And then you have Esme Bianco, for instance, whose career was just dead in the toilet since Game of Thrones. And now she's in the news again, and she's posting on her Instagram and Twitter pages. She's posting these interviews that she's doing, and all of this stuff about domestic violence. It just rubs me the wrong way. I don't know. Something seems wrong with it. And, Ilma Gore, there are a number of people online who say that she is a hoaxer and that she actually tried to faked a hate crime. I didn't go down that rabbit hole, but it's there if you want to look into it. And it definitely seems to be some compelling stuff, but I didn't have time to research it. But she is definitely a hardcore activist, and her work is extremely political. The work of art that she's most known for is a painting that she did of Trump with a micro penis. And, I don't want to wade into the politics of that. But, it's almost like it kind of reminds me of Jussie Smollett, honestly. Someone who is a really big activist and thinks that they have, God on their side, so to speak. And so whatever they have to do to gain some publicity for their cause, even if it's a lie, that's okay. And so I think that's interesting. Of course, I know he was trying to get publicity for his career too, which don't think that's not an issue with a number of these accusers trying to up their profile. Maybe not all of them, some of them. And, I think it's interesting. If you look into the background as well of a number of accusers, what you find is a history of instability with several of them. Evan Rachel Wood is very open about hers, and I understand that she blames it on abuse in her past, but, she displays pictures on her Instagram of self-cutting and things like that. One of the accusers that I haven't discussed, Ashley Morgan, someone on the internet found where she had left a review for a treatment center, I think, for psychological disorders. She specifically mentions anorexia and OCD. And I bring this up because I'm not trying to shame anyone for having mental health issues. We have a number of them in my family. I've dealt with depression, and so I have nothing but sympathy for people with psychological problems. But again, we have to consider that some of the women who are accusing Marilyn Manson may not be the most psychologically stable. He himself made a joke about how he was flypaper to damaged women. Well, I know that's not perhaps the nicest thing to say, but there could be a lot of truth in that. And I'm not saying that people who are psychologically disturbed or people who are experiencing emotional issues or problems lie necessarily. But I'm saying that, again, I think that what we're seeing with a number of these accusers is we're just seeing probably some of the most troubled women that he interacted with. And we all know, look, let's just be honest, we all know that there are people in our lives who are stable and whose word we tend to value more than others. And I don't know what kind of situation some of these women are in, but there are strong incentives in terms of financial incentives, but also other kinds of emotional and psychological incentives for people to jump on board with this. So this is a review that Ashley Morgan left online for a treatment center, and this is how she discusses herself. She says, "Hi everyone, I'm a super happy former anorexic who spent 5 to 6 years in and out of residential care." So an anorexic who spends 5 to 6 years in and out of residential care is someone who has a significant problem. And I understand you might say, well, that's because she went through so much with Marilyn Manson or whatever. Okay, perhaps that's definitely one way of looking at it. But another way of looking at it is that a number of these accusers are just fairly disturbed and perhaps not reputable. And no, I'm not saying that everybody who has anorexia, or even most people who have anorexia or any kind of other psychological disorder are like this woman. I'm just pointing you to something here. Some of these accusers, too, I'm not going to go through the entire list, but you have to know that there are several of them that are just blatantly, just completely non-credible. You know, I had a number of people online encouraging me to look into this Annie Abrams person who made accusations online against Manson and had put up little snippets of their conversations. And honestly, I mean, Manson needs to have his phone taken away for talking with someone who seems like such a nutcase. But it's not a federal crime, but I hope that, you know, maybe someone needs to take his phone away for a while if he was confiding in this nutcase. But she is clearly a nutcase. And I'm sorry, those of you who wanted me to talk about her a lot, but I just, like, she is so obviously nutty that it's not even, to me, it's not even worth my time. But I just want you to understand that this Annie Abrams girl, she's now pulled her Instagram page. But she would post regularly about her mental disorders and emotional problems and so forth. And she would post about how all of her friends were abandoning her and calling her a liar. And she apparently at one point claimed to have cancer, but didn't. She's changed identities online and all kinds of, like, she's just not credible. And, you know, I don't know what Manson was doing to get involved with her, to talk to her. But anyway, so, you know, but what's interesting though is that the stuff that Annie posted on her Instagram page, she, like I said, she posted snippets of conversations that she had with Manson, both via phone and also via text. And what's interesting actually is how nice he comes across in them. Like at one point, he sends her a picture. You may have heard of this or seen it. He sends her a picture of Lana Del Rey, and she looks heavy in the picture. And Manson, you know, he makes a comment about her weight, but then he says, well, I don't mean to body shame or anything. Like here he is apologizing for body shaming. And in other parts of the conversation, he talks about how sort of heartbroken he is over these allegations and over what Evan Rachel Wood is doing, and he doesn't understand it, and he feels betrayed and everything. Like he actually sounds innocent. And so I encourage you to go and find these if they're still around. I'll try to look them up and include them in my next video. But that's all I'm going to say about Annie Abrams is that she's a nutcase. Shame on Manson for being stupid enough to talk to her and to confide in her. I hope he's learned a lesson. But nothing that she posted is incriminating. In fact, it's the opposite. I think it makes him look good, look sympathetic. Another topic that I wanted to mention is the photograph of the messed up back that Esme Bianco used in one of her interviews, and she posted it on her Instagram. And, you know, as I said earlier in my other video, when I analyzed her interviews, I talked about the fact that, you know, we don't know this isolated photo of a back. We don't even know whose back it is necessarily. There's no context, nothing from, you know, to indicate what this is, except a back that looks like it has some kind of an indentations on it in the manner of ropes, a rope pattern. And, you know, I didn't want to say this earlier without investigating further, but even then, I wasn't buying this back video because it does not look like the kinds of marks that would be left if someone was actually being whipped or lashed with a whip or with a rope. And I didn't want to say anything because I didn't feel sure about my hypothesis, but it just didn't look right. You know, I've seen pictures before of different types of lashings that people can get from all kinds of things. And I myself have gotten a rope burn from recreational sports activity years ago. And so it doesn't look like, these things don't look like the marks that she demonstrates on this back. And so sure enough, I was contacted last week by someone who knows more about this stuff and is more plugged into this kind of community. And this person was sharing pictures, and these pictures got circulated online, but sharing pictures of what a back looks like when it really is lashed or whipped by something. And you can see that it's very, very different kind of look. And really, what a number of us surmised online from looking at the picture that Esme presented is that what this looks like is that somebody was actually bound up or tied up with rope, and that being tightly tied up or constricted, then the rope, the pattern would form a kind of an indentation, and so you would see then the pattern of the rope itself on the back. What am I saying? Well, I'm saying that as a part of Esme's BDSM work, and even on Game of Thrones, there were scenes where she would be tied up. In fact, she shared some pictures from that at the time. But my point is that through the course of her work, she would be frequently tied up. At these various exhibitions and shows and different things that she would do, she would be frequently tied up and bound up by a rope. And so I really think, and you can look at it for yourself, but I really think that what she's showing us in that picture of the back, that she was trying to use as proof that Marilyn Manson whipped her, it looks more like just the indentations of someone who has been tightly bound with rope. So I think it's very shady. It's very shady in a number of respects. The fact that we don't know whose back it is just a close-up picture of a back, no context, no way of proving when or where it came from or whatever. And then also the fact that it doesn't even to look like the kinds of markings that someone would get if they were actually being whipped or lashed. Another thing that's really important to understand is that a number of these accusers have been friends for years. I'm not going to say all of them were linked prior to this year. I do think that there were a number that were recruited, as I said, by Ilma Gore and others working behind the scenes. But, there have been a number of, there's been some great work done by some amateur sleuths on the internet who have found all of these photographs going back years where you have Esme Bianco, good friends with Ashley Walters, with Manson's former assistant. And so, again, these are not disinterested parties here. These are women who've been friends and I believe have been conspiring for a while. But you've got pictures proving that Esme Bianco and Ashley Walters were good friends. And as I said in an earlier video, they were even riding around in Manson's car, and they wrecked his car years ago. And then you've got pictures showing that some of the other accusers were friends with, whether casual or not, but friends with or associated with through various projects. So one of the accusers worked on a project that Esme Bianco was producing. Another of the accusers has worked with Evan Rachel Wood. You can see here actually that Evan Rachel Wood even donated to her online. And so anyway, my point is, if you go online and you can look this up yourself, like I said, on these different pages where people are exposing this stuff. But these women, a number of these women have been, the main accusers are connected through various ways. And of course, Esme Bianco and Evan Rachel Wood go back to at least when they testified several years ago, initially testified about this. So my point is that this, again, this is not an organic process where these accusers just sort of one by one are coming out individually. This is a coordinated rollout, and I believe a conspiracy of sorts, in that a number of these women go back many years and have grievances against Marilyn Manson. And again, I don't know what he's like. But I don't doubt that he, like many artists, can be erratic, can be an asshole, can be narcissistic, and maybe even in some ways be abusive. I don't know. But what I do know is that we don't have nearly enough evidence to cancel someone or to make a judgment that he is guilty. And in fact, what we do have are all of these indications that there are problems with the accuser's story. There's problems they've told lies. There are profound inaccuracies and inconsistencies. And so I believe that it's much more likely that he's innocent of these charges. And I have to say, just generally speaking, I'm I said earlier that that ridicule is a rhetorical strategy, and that's part of what I'm doing with some of this. But I have to say too that I know that a number of you, it makes you angry, or some of you, it makes you angry when you see me making jokes because you think I'm making fun of domestic violence and domestic and sexual assault survivors. You know what? Both There's anger on both sides. I'm angry because I think that there's a rush to judgment here. I think that no one in the media and very few people in the public are interested in due process or in looking at these different claims with any kind of skepticism or basic inquiry and intelligence. And I am angry at the fact that it seems like more and more these things are being litigated via social media and not in proper ways. And I think that it's getting worse. It seems like it is, and I'm also worried about where it's taking us in the future. It's Marilyn Manson. I don't know who it's going to be in the future. And I also don't like the idea of picking on an artist for the kind of work that he or she produces, because a lot of people are trying to take the music and the aesthetic and even that bullshit autobiography of Marilyn Manson's and turn all of that against him and say, well, see, look here. I mean, you have to imagine. This is a little hypothetical exercise for you, okay? I want you to imagine yourself, you right now. I want you to imagine that for whatever reason, you overnight there everybody became interested in your life, and someone out of your past accused you of being horrible or doing terrible things. Now, I want you to think about this. Think of, and you're just an ordinary person, most of you listening to this, think of how there are a number of people in your life that if they thought they could get some time in the media, or maybe a career advancement, or some free money, or maybe they just don't like you, or maybe they've had a bad experience with you and they really don't think you're a good person. Just imagine how many people could pick out something that would make you, all in its totality, would make you sound a lot worse than you are. Maybe not make you sound like Marilyn Manson, but he's lived an edgier life than probably most of you have. But I can tell you what it would be for me. Right? Let's say that I was a big rock star or something, or I'm just even who I am, and for some reason, there was a lot of media interest in me, and so someone came out and made an accusation against me, right? What would people say about me? Well, they could say things like, oh my God, she liked to make these videos where she was defending, like rapists like Marilyn Manson and domestic abusers like Johnny Depp. Oh my God. Oh, she liked horror films. In fact, she really loved horror movies. Oh, I remember when I lived with her, she would watch these horror movies all the time they were so disturbing. Oh my God. Yeah, when I knew her, she was really going through a bad period with substance abuse and stuff like that. And I mean, my point is, no, you're probably not going to find someone in my past saying that I tied them up and whipped them in a closet or something. But then again, that's not the lifestyle, BDSM lifestyle that I've been engaged in. But you will be able to find enough people who, for fame or money or whatever reason, will be able to collectively put together a very negative and inaccurate impression of me. And so we have to be careful about this stuff. And just like I said, the example with Michael Jackson and the fact that, his attorney said that he was just constantly sued for the most ridiculous things at times. There are people who come out of the woodwork for this stuff. And you have to also remember, okay, that Marilyn Manson has encountered many, 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 many people, had experiences with many, 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 many women, and you're getting what I believe basically is a tiny sliver of the most self-interested, maybe psychologically disturbed or morally disreputable or what have you, or most ticked off at him or whatever, who are coming out, okay? And why are there not many people coming out to defend him? Well, because look at the climate that we're in. Who's going to risk their career? There were some that tried. I mean, Asia Argento, look, I think that she's a very problematic figure. I don't know what went on with that somewhat underage boy or that whole thing, and then I don't know. But she came out, she defended him, and she was one of the big figures in Me Too. Rose McGowan, who said, well, he never did this stuff with me. Same thing with Dita Von Teese. So my point being that there have been some people who have come out, and I've mentioned some of the others. But yes, there are powerful disincentives to coming out and defending him. And so, just keep all of that in mind. I think it's important. Now, one other thing I wanted to address. Someone, in response to my last video, said that that the presumption of innocence is for the judicial system. In other words, yes, we should have the presumption of innocence for the judicial system, but we in the general public, we in the non-judicial world in society, we can make whatever judgments we want. Well, yes, you can make whatever judgments you want in the sense that no one is going to stop you from thinking what you think or from discussing what you believe. But, it is not, I do not agree that the presumption of innocence is just for the legal system, because there are many, many powerful non-judicial, non-legal consequences that come to someone's life when they are canceled or falsely accused. That I think that can be basically just as harmful to someone when they're canceled. The Romans in ancient times, there was this idea, and I'm gonna butcher how you say it. I should have looked it up, but it's damnatio memoriae. I'm probably really messing that up. It's Latin, damnatio memoriae. And it translates into memory damnation, damning of the memory. And in ancient times, this was one way that you could really punish someone, is you would erase their names from, the all history books, if they were on any statues, any records anywhere. No one was even supposed to speak of them or acknowledge them. It was like a total blotting out of the personhood. And that is kind of where we're at now, that just on the basis of a group of people's word, then we are just going to blot out this person more or less from society. And just basically he's expected to now not have this career, not have this place in society, not have a publicist, not have an agent. All of this work that he's done on, his album and on these TV shows and everything, it's like nothing. And we're not even really supposed to speak his name fondly anymore. And the thing that really upsets me is that those of us who want to raise these questions, we're looked at as being in some way subversive, and in some way we're doing something that's unsettling for society, or that's hurting sexual assault victims, domestic violence victims. So I think that we definitely need to think about this stuff more. And I don't agree that the presumption of innocence should just be for the legal world. And I also don't like the idea that because Marilyn Manson, this is the idea that some people seem to have, that because Marilyn Manson has already enjoyed a great deal of success in life and is wealthy, that we shouldn't care if he's unjustly canceled. I've heard that argument about other people as well in other respects, where people would say, well, it's not like we're going to throw him in prison, or it's not like we're going to kill him or anything. He's already rich. He's already got all this money. So what does he care if he can't make another movie? Boo-hoo. Or he can't make more money. Boo-hoo. Well, that's just an incredibly calloused and sort of stupid response. First of all, I don't know what his financial situation is. A number of these stars are actually very precariously imbalanced financially, so he might not be in as good of shape as people assume. He really might need to keep doing more projects, touring and things like that. But secondly, how is it your place to decide how much of a career is enough, or how much money is enough, or how much success someone should have. Think about your own life. I would imagine that a lot of you who are listening to me on this, or I'm sorry, who are watching me, I imagine that a number of you enjoy relatively comfortable lives, compared especially to people in less developed parts of the world. So maybe someone would decide, well, you have enough, we'll come and take some of your stuff for whatever reason. Who cares? I mean, you've still got a cell phone, right? You've still got air conditioning, whatever. Why do you need a good job? Why do you need a career? I mean, that's just silly. That's just stupid thinking, and it makes me angry. It's because I think that it's so non-empathetic, and it is really so unreasonable to feel that way. So anyway. So, if I had to sum up where I am now, like I said, with the Marilyn Manson thing, and I think I explained it earlier, but I just want to restate everything that we have learned about in the past several weeks since the initial allegations came out, and since Evan Rachel Wood and some of the others came out on Instagram, is that we've learned that this is not an organically evolving phenomenon, but that this is a coordinated rollout, that that many of the accusers share a background, share a friendship, or are linked in various ways, and that they were recruited by Ilmagor and others. We have learned that there are inconsistencies and even lies in a number of the statements, particularly in the statements of the most important accusers. We have heard things in the testimony of the accusers that frankly just does not make sense. And again, if we can't trust them in certain ways, if we can't trust their story in certain ways, how can we trust it in other ways? And I think that all of these things are really important, especially, as I said, given that someone like Marilyn Manson, this is a very particular, unusual case. And so I invite you to go back and look at my earlier videos. I get into a lot more stuff and talk more about kind of my theories behind this. And as always, my videos are controversial, most of them too controversial to be monetized. And so I appreciate any tip that you can give me, even $1 I get excited about. I really do. I'll send you a thank you email. But any kind of tips, but if not, please subscribe. It really helps me, and let me know your ideas for future videos, because I'm open to other things, and I am going to start putting out videos on new topics as well, and I've got some surprises for you coming up. So have a good day. Bye-bye.